As the first-place Baltimore Orioles continue their torrid nature amongst the heat at Camden Yards. And, of course, on to the road this weekend as the Ravens begin training camp in Owings Mills. Luke and I will be on the scene out there for all things Ravens news. Get on the WNST text service. That, of course, is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. We'll be out on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, all those cool places. And in 31 other places, we begin this journey for the NFL. Been kind of a quiet couple of weeks around the league. It is never quiet in New Orleans, where the Saints dominate conversation there. And I don't know how high the expectations are, but certainly Drew Brees hanging around, Coach Sean Payton hanging around against all odds, and Fletcher Mackel covering it all as an Emmy-nominated sports anchor at WDSU. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at FletcherWDSU. We go down to the Bayou where, Fletcher, I don't think there's a day that goes by, I'm not kidding, I'm in Baltimore, where somebody is not drinking beer on Bourbon Street on my Facebook page this time of year. People go to New Orleans all day, all night. It's not just a Jazz Fest, a Mardi Gras thing. People love that town down there. It was Tequila Day the other day. I had 3 friends in the quarter, man.
No, you are absolutely correct. There is never a dull moment here in New Orleans. Festivals, parties, it's something we do very, very well here. So yes, while most people know about Jazz Fest and French Quarter Fest and Voodoo Fest and different things like that, and Mardi Gras, of course, there really is never a dull moment here. It is hot here, though. I mean, I know it gets muggy in your neck of the woods, but the humidity down here in July and August is just suffocating. So we do get a little bit of a respite, I guess you could say, in July and August, but then things get really nice from September through June.
It's funny you'd say that, and it's certainly not funny. That's probably the wrong word for me to use. I mean, I was there when Katrina was blowing the winds up 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, and I remember that vividly. And I would tell anybody the pre-part of that storm, I've never felt more humidity anywhere in my life. I remember walking out just onto Canal Street 2 days before that storm came, and it was unlike, I've been in the jungles in Australia and stuff, and rainforest and stuff. I've never felt anything like that, man.
Yeah, it definitely hits you like a wet blanket. It some days it feels like you've walked out of your house and into a sauna because it's very tropical here, or subtropical, I guess would be the term, because July and August, and that's one of the reasons why the Saints have tested out West Virginia and the Allegheny Mountains for training camp, because Sean Payton got on this big kick a few years ago where it was so draining on the players, and it was dehydrating, and guys with IVs and soft tissue injuries that they wanted to go up to the mountains, actually a little closer to you all, about 4.5 hours away, White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, and see what training camp up there was like. And I'll say this, we wake up in the mornings up there, and it's in the low 50s, and they're practicing in temperatures in the upper 60s and in mostly 70s. And it is definitely a huge change from what we have here in New Orleans this time of year.
Yeah, I don't know how many people in our audience have ever been there. I actually have been there. I went to the Homestead, man, back in the 80s, and I remember it being this old southern sort of plantation-y looking place, and, the rolling hills and then the golf course that's there. I find it fascinating the Saints have chosen there to practice. I remember they were a big part of the Cheese League for many years up in Wisconsin. I know we've talked Cowboys this week, and they go out to the West Coast. There's a big, big controversy here when the Ravens moved their camp from Westminster into their own facility. To a large degree, there is no place like home. And, the Ravens were trying to move their training camp 10 miles up the road to Westminster, and it was really a massive hardship. I saw it all, and living in a little crappy hotel on the edge of a college campus and practicing and showering and working out in college facilities, moving your whole training camp 1,000 miles away on an airplane. There are challenges involved with that are really kind of massive, and the Saints are one of the teams that take that on.
Yeah, look, everybody has a different opinion on this. Maybe if the Saints had won a Super Bowl over the last 2 years, everybody would say, a lot of pro leagues or copycat leagues. Had the Saints gone up to a luxury resort, the Greenbrier in West Virginia, and won a Super Bowl, maybe other teams would be looking into that approach, but the Saints have gone 7-9 in back-to-back years. And what's disheartening about the Saints leaving New Orleans is that in the last 15 years in the NFL, you just referenced La Crosse, Wisconsin, where the Saints trained all throughout the 80s and a portion of the 90s. But the Saints, like a lot of NFL teams, have a state-of-the-art, breathtaking facility that was paid for in large part by the taxpayers to keep the Saints here. Pre-Katrina, post-Katrina, the owner, Tom Benson, worked out deals with the state, and they have a state-of-the-art facility. So practicing here, having 3,000 fans there, sometimes up to 5,000 fans there, every practice where your fans can watch your team practice. And if they want to go inside because it's too hot or it rains, they have a breathtaking indoor facility. The Ravens actually practiced there when they were down here for the Super Bowl.
Sure.
And so, it's a little disheartening that they go so far away from their fans. I don't have a problem. I understand we want to build camaraderie. We want to isolate ourselves from the distraction. We want to kind of get back to that camp mentality. The Saints, after Katrina, went to a small college in Jackson, Mississippi, which is 2.5 hours from New Orleans. It's still all Saints country in Mississippi, one state over, still on the Gulf Coast. And that worked out well. But to go all the way to West Virginia, it's ruffled a lot of feathers here because after Katrina, people talked about the Saints helping the city and the city helping the Saints, and we romanticize it a lot. But it really is a great storyline that everybody was in this together. That team embraced the city embraced the team, and they kind of lifted each other up. And when you take the team away for a month to go to West Virginia, it just feels like they forgot where they came from, and that's what I think hurts people here. Is fans here are going to get to watch 4 practices, whereas fans in West Virginia who could care less about the Saints are going to get to watch 21 days of practice, and so I think more than anything that is what has ruffled a lot of feathers of the Black and Gold Nation or the Who Dat Nation. About the team going up to the Allegheny Mountains in West Virginia and holding training camp.
I mean, how many fans actually follow them up there? Because, that is literally in the middle of nowhere. You got to really want to get there, I would think, if you're in New Orleans, and you're going to bring your gold, gear up there for a couple of days and, watch guys hit each other in pads. You got to like golf or like the mountains or like a weird flight and a long drive, right?
Yeah, no, look, let me tell you, you're in the middle of nowhere. The resort is beautiful. I'll say this. If you want a vacation, I know people in the Beltway, they've told us that they get a nice contingent, a nice push as well from people in Pittsburgh because they're all, I guess, probably within a 4 to 6 hour drive, D.C., Baltimore, and even Pittsburgh to an extent. And so it's a breathtaking facility with everything you can possibly imagine, but you are 100% correct. Fran Fraschilla, the basketball analyst a few years ago at the draft, he had a funny line when he described a European player. He said he's 2 years away from being 2 years away. And I would tell people about White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. It's 90 minutes away from being 90 minutes away from nowhere. So you are really in the middle of nowhere. And as far as the fans, look, the people in West Virginia this year, I think it's going to be different because they dealt with that tragic, historic flooding up there.
Sure.
And I think that they need some type of, something good to happen. And I think that having an NFL team will lift their spirits. So that's a good storyline this year. But for all practical purposes, the first year, fans came out because of the novelty of it. Last year, there was no one there. The only practices that fans really turned out and embraced it last year was when the Patriots came to town, and the Saints and the Patriots spent 2 days practicing against each other. But the drop-off in fan interest from year 1 to year 2 in West Virginia was pretty steep. The first year, again, novelty was interesting. The second year, I think the novelty had worn off a little bit, and fans just kind of, felt been there, done that as far as it goes.
Fletcher Mackel is an Emmy-nominated sports anchor in New Orleans, down in the bayou at WDSU. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at FletcherWDSU. He is one of our returning champions here, talking all things New Orleans and Saints all season. And look, we had a tragedy here with the Ravens losing a player in an unfortunate dirt bike incident down on the streets of Miami back in right before the owners' meetings. Certainly in New Orleans, an incredible incredible legacy player gunned down. And you were talking about violence in this country. We talk about riots in our city and all the post-Katrina issues going on in your community. Just an incredible tragedy, I think, for everyone associated with the Saints and that championship and all the celebrations that were such a part of New Orleans and the back end of Katrina and winning that Super Bowl. Just a devastating loss in Will Smith, and also just a good dude, right?
Yeah, he was. And it is sad. You know, he was gunned down in an area where, you know, a lot of people go to, tourists go to, locals go to. Magazine Street is a great area with a lot of great restaurants and bars, and it happened back in April, and it really is a sad thing because he was one of those foundation pillars of the team's success. He was the first round draft pick in 2004, so he was one of the few guys who predated Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and was here pre-Katrina. So he saw, you know, what the city was before Katrina, what it was during, what it was after, and he was one of those guys who really embraced it. He married a local girl and was making his home here with their 3 children. And so it was definitely a huge loss for the Saints, knowing that this was a team captain for a decade and one of the most decorated players in franchise history, and a road rage incident took his life a few months ago. So it's a very tragic year for the Saints.
Well, and I guess that, you know, from a civic standpoint, lots of great interest in making sure that this this person never sees the light of day again, right?
Yeah, in the court case, look, I know that, you know, New Orleans, Baltimore, there are parallels, and I think we deal with a lot of the same social issues. And in right now, this case is taking, I think, longer than the Saints and some Saints fans would want. And the defense attorney for the gentleman that shot Will Smith is presenting a case is that his client was the one who was defending himself, that Will Smith was the aggressor. Now, as the facts play out, we'll see how all that unfolds. But right now, it's definitely something that has the public interest here. And in a good man was shot in, you know, his 3 children here grow up without a father, and it's a very tragic situation. And it seems like we deal with all too often here. And again, I know that you all deal with a lot of the similar situations there. But it's just something that it seems like we're talking about way too much, and we have been talking about way too much on the news for a long time.
Well, I guess the news will move at least onto the field for the time being here the next couple of weeks. What are the prospects for the Saints in a division where Cam Newton and Carolina just kind of ran through everybody until they got to Peyton Manning out in Santa Clara? And certainly the Tampa Bay Bucks, I wasn't for drafting that kid a year and a half ago, but it's pretty clear he can play a little bit, and they're on the come. And then there's just the questions of where the Saints are going with a 30 quarterback in Drew Brees, who's the local legend, and Peyton looked like he was 3 feet out the door, and here he comes back again. It is sort of a tumultuous time for the franchise right now, and I don't know that hope springs for them to be in the Super Bowl in Houston in a few months, right?
Yeah, I'll say this, just addressing a few of those things. I don't know if I would address tumultuous, and the only reason why I would say that is that maybe a year ago I would have said that, but Tom Benson, the owner, who's 89 years old, had a falling out with his daughter and granddaughter, who everybody thought were going to take over the franchise. But now that situation has been resolved, when you look at the Saints, they have, you know, next to New England, the longest owner, coach, general manager, quarterback situation in the NFL. So I don't know if I would use the word tumultuous to describe the Saints in certain regards, maybe on the field potentially, but off the field, if anything, they've got the hierarchy structure and in the stability that I think a lot of organizations potentially envy with an owner in Tom Benson and a general manager in Mickey Loomis and a head coach in Sean Payton and a quarterback in Drew Brees that have now been here for 11 years and all seemingly get along well. Now, look, Drew Brees is 37 years old. He'll be 38 years old at the end of this season. And the hang-up on the new contract for him is I think he and his agent, everybody knows, want more guaranteed money. And the Saints are looking at a situation like Peyton Manning and saying, you know, when skills go, they go fast. You know, look at Peyton Manning, look at Derek Jeter, look at Kobe Bryant. Peyton went from being the MVP in 13 to a shell of himself in 15. And so I'm not sure the Saints want to lock into a deal that is ridiculous, knowing that their quarterback is 37 years old and they're coming off back-to-back 7-9 seasons. But Drew Brees, in my opinion, is not the problem. Drew Brees, you could put anybody around him, and he's going to find a way in this NFL age of pass-hacky teams to get it done. The Achilles heel for the Saints since Sean Payton got here has always been and will always be the defense. Sean Payton is an offensive innovator, and to be one of the great offensive minds in the history of the NFL. And history will remember him that way. From what they did in 2011 to winning the Super Bowl in 2009 to all the offensive records that Brees has broken and his players have broken, he's a great offensive innovator. But he's now going on defensive coordinator number 6 in year number 11. So defense is where they can seemingly never get it right, and they will go as far as their defense can. I don't want to say carry them, but as far as their defense can potentially take them. If they can just get back to the middle of the pack defensively with new coordinator Dennis Allen this year, then they've got a chance to get to that 10-6, 11-5 mark and get into the playoffs. I certainly don't think they're better than Carolina, and I don't think they're going 13-3 or anything like that. But I think in 2013, the Saints finished 11-5. They went to the playoffs. They beat Philadelphia at Philadelphia, and then they ran into Seattle in Seattle and gave them a really good playoff game, just couldn't get past them out in the Pacific Northwest. I think if Dennis Allen, can help this defense and put these guys in the right position, and I don't know if he can, well, then the Saints can be a playoff team. If he can't pick up where Rob Ryan failed and Steve Spagnuolo failed, well then, the Saints are going to be what they are. They're a 500 at best team, because their defense is just their Achilles heel.
Well, certainly for the Ravens, the Ben Watson pickup, certainly brings some strains from New Orleans, and a lot of those receptions coming this way. But as you've pointed out, Brees has had a pretty revolving cast of characters there. But I know we're happy to have Ben Watson here.
Look, Ben Watson, you don't understand how great he is. Not only is he still an excellent player at 34 or 35 years old, but you won't find a better man. I mean, just the years that he was here, for us in the media, for people in the community, this is a guy that doesn't just get it. He goes above and beyond. He will be so involved with your community. He'll be engaged with everybody. This is somebody that is going to do special things after football. And you've got a guy that championship teams need to have, because, he understands how to handle himself on the field. He's great in the locker room. He's great wins or losses. To me, that was a loss for the Saints. But it gets back to this, too. Just like I alluded to earlier, nothing against Ben Watson, because you'll learn that he's a good player, but he had his best years here playing for Drew Brees. There are a lot of guys who have rolled through here that have had the best years of their careers with Drew Brees and Sean Payton as the head coach and the quarterback. So the one thing I'm worried about is Ben Watson, people may be being a little discouraged because the offenses are a little different, and he may not have the same numbers he had, last year, that he produces this year in Baltimore for you all.
One last thing for you, because you're not just on the Saints beat down there. They also play a little bit of basketball there. Interesting with the All-Star game, right? Moving out of Charlotte, that New Orleans moves to the forefront. Certainly a city set up to do something on short notice, but that'd be a hell of a boon for New Orleans, right?
Oh, it'd be great. And I certainly think New Orleans is the front runner. I certainly think that the NBA wants it to work out. Obviously, because of the laws that the NBA feels discriminate against the LGBT community, Charlotte, North Carolina lost the game, which I think was the right decision, and I applaud the NBA for doing that. And in New Orleans has hosted 2 games very successfully in recent years, in 2014 and in 2008. And I think the owners, look, in February we have temperatures that may get into the 50s. Sometimes you're in the 60s. So it's a pretty good stop to come and eat and party and enjoy their biggest event. Last year they were in Toronto and it was 6 degrees or something like that. So I certainly think, New Orleans is the front runner. But the one obstacle they're going through right now is it's the first weekend of Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras here, for your listeners, people may think it's one day, Fat Tuesday. It's actually 2 weeks of parades and celebrations and parties and such. And the first weekend, which is a little more tame, would be the same weekend as NBA All-Star. So I think the city is working very hard to make sure that they have enough public resources to have everything covered. But what a great time that would be, to have Mardi Gras parades and NBA All-Star weekend all at the same time in the city. It would just be a great weekend for people to come down.
And soon to come, just 7-8 months away at this point. So a little turnaround time. Hey, always great having you on, Fletcher, man. Send me up some of those fried shrimp from the Acme Oyster House, or pork burger. Do something for me. We don't get down to New Orleans often enough, but we always have fun when we do.
All right, no problem.
Appreciate you, Fletcher. Fletcher Mackel, Emmy-nominated sports anchor at WDSU in New Orleans. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at FletcherWDSU. You can find me out at nasty at WNST.net. Email me anytime, day or night. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, as well as in the Buy a Toyota audio vault 24 hours a day. Anything you miss here, you missed the beginning of this segment, you can always grab it on your mobile device in the Buy a Toyota audio vault. Download the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear, as well as on Facebook Live and our WNSTV YouTube channel. Last but never least, breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. Anything happens with the Ravens, the Orioles, and we will be on the fields in Owings Mills later on in the week. Luke and I, you'll get it first on your WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis is here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.